Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going deep into the world of Austin Osman Spare.
Okay.
And we're looking at this text called Anathema of Zos.
Right.
And this text is presented as this weird kind of sermon, but it's delivered by this character that Spare calls Zos. And he calls himself a goat herd.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, this text is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not.
But we're going to dive right in.
Okay.
So even the preface, which was written, I think,
Oh.
by Louis Martini in 1985,
Yeah, that's right.
it kind of sets this ominous tone right from the start.
It does.
And Martini calls Spare this watcher on the threshold.
Yeah.
So it's like we're being warned right away.
Yeah.
Like, be careful where you're going.
A little bit.
So right from the start, Zos is addressing his audience in this kind of like aggressive way.
Oh, yeah,
He calls them all these names, like involuntary mendicants and pariahs and whoremongers and adulterers. And,
Distended bellies.
and distended bellies.
Yeah, and the prevalent sick grotesques.
He definitely grabs your attention right away.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
Like, come on.
He's not pulling any punches.
No, he's not. So I think before we get too deep into Zos's like kind of fiery sermon here,
Okay.
I think we need to understand what automatic writing is.
Okay.
So can you
Yeah.
give us a little background on that?
Yeah, so automatic writing, it's basically like it's writing without conscious thought.
Okay.
So it's like you just let your hand be guided by whatever.
Okay.
Some people believe it's the subconscious or even like external forces or something like that.
That's really interesting.
It's a fascinating practice. And it was popular actually in the early 20th century. Yeah,
Okay.
especially among the surrealists and the Dada art movements.
Okay.
Spare was definitely connected to these movements.
That makes sense.
So that's where that connection comes in.
I can totally see how that ties into like the kind of bizarre and dreamlike quality of Spare's
whole-
artwork.
Absolutely.
So speaking of connections, what about this name, Zos?
Oh, yeah. So the name Zos, it's super significant in Spare's work.
Yeah.
He used it a lot to refer to himself,
Okay.
but also his magical system.
Oh,
It's
wow.
almost like a representation of his true self.
So like a magical alter ego or something.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
Yeah.
Or like a higher state of magical consciousness.
Interesting. Okay, so back to this sermon. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that really jumps out at you
Yeah.
is Zos just like going off
Right.
about religion.
Totally.
Yeah, he was not a fan.
And he hates the idea of salvation.
No.
Like he's really against that.
And this is a theme that runs throughout a lot of Spare's work.
Okay.
So he was really skeptical of organized religion,
Mhm.
the idea of seeking guidance from like, anything external.
Right.
Instead, what he emphasizes is like self-discovery,
Okay.
the power of desire, and the need to embrace your own instincts,
Oh, interesting.
even like the dark ones,
It's about looking within yourself.
instead of looking to some god or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. It's like Spare, through Zos, is saying, like, become your own god.
Oh,
You know?
right.
Take responsibility for your own life and your own destiny.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. And it can be really empowering, but it can also be scary,
Yeah, I can see that.
for sure.
So there's this other line that stood out to me.
Right.
It's sensation, nutrition, mastication, procreation.
Okay.
This is your blindworm cycle.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Like it's so raw
Yeah.
and so primal.
Very primal.
What do you think he's getting at with that?
So Spare was super interested in those like instinctual drives that control, or that underlie human behavior.
Okay.
So in that passage, he's highlighting those basic biological needs and how we often just get caught in these cycles that repeat over and over and over,
Right.
driven by forces we don't even really understand. Like, wake up,
Yeah.
don't just blindly follow those urges
Right.
without questioning why.
He's really making us think.
That's his goal, to shake you up a little bit.
So then he hits us with this question. He
Okay.
says, know ye what ye think ye know for certain.
Yeah.
Like it's such a direct challenge
Totally.
to the reader, to all of us.
Yeah.
Like urging us to question, all of our assumptions.
You wanted people to dig deeper,
Yeah.
like examine the foundations of what they believe
Oh, wow.
and to let go of
Yeah.
anything that like doesn't really hold up.
He's skeptical.
Yeah.
But then he goes on to make these pronouncements about like the power of the will.
Okay.
He says, man has willed man.
Yeah.
And your desires shall become flesh, your dreams reality.
Yeah.
And
That's powerful.
no fear shall alter it one whit.
Right.
Like he's making these bold statements.
And that's where we start to see connections to his concept of sigil magic.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed how certain symbols or images just like make you feel something, or they evoke some kind of a strong desire? Well, Spare believed that you could actually consciously tap into that subconscious power through creating sigils.
Oh.
So basically like symbols to manifest your desires.
I mean, that's a really interesting concept.
It is.
But then Zos says something
Okay.
that seems like it's the opposite of that whole idea of self-empowerment.
Oh.
It says, subscribing only to self-love,
Okay.
the outcroppings of my hatred now speak.
Right. So like,
Yeah,
how do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where Spare's understanding of the shadow self comes into play.
Okay.
So he wasn't advocating for like a naive or superficial kind of self-love that just pretends, the dark parts of human nature don't exist.
Okay.
He believed that to truly discover yourself, you got to acknowledge those darker impulses and even try to integrate them.
So it's about like understanding those shadow elements.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to pretend they don't exist.
Absolutely.
Really profound, actually.
It is. It can be challenging, though.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's what he's urging us to do.
Okay, there's another line here
Okay.
that I got to be honest. It took me a few times to really wrap my head around.
I bet.
It says, the way of heaven is a purpose anterior to and not induced by thought.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So what's your take on that?
That's where Spare gets really like metaphysical, he's saying.
Yeah.
That there's like this level of consciousness that is deeper than thought, that actually comes before rational thought.
Wow.
Like this kind of knowing. That's just instinctual.
So we all have this.
You think so?
But we have to learn how to tap into it.
Yes.
It's like some ancient wisdom or something.
Yeah. He called it the Kia.
Oh, wow.
And it's central to his whole magical system. So.
But then there's this other line that I'm kind of like,
okay.
Whoa, hold on a sec.
Yeah.
It says, sans women, your love is anathema.
Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty bold statement.
And this is one of the most controversial
Okay.
and debated passages in all of Spare's work.
Okay, so how do we make sense of that?
I think you have to remember that he saw sexuality as this really powerful force.
Right.
It's like a primal energy that you can use for magic.
Right.
So this statement might be interpreted within that framework. It's almost like he's saying, love without this specific dynamic, it's cursed, or it holds you back.
It's really complex.
It is. Very complex.
He just throws this in there.
Okay.
He says, alas, there has been a great failure. Man is dead. Only women remain.
That's a provocative one.
I mean, what's going on there?
Well, it could reflect Spare's views on gender roles.
Right.
And the dynamics of society at the time. I mean, remember, he was living in a time of like crazy social upheaval.
Yeah.
Traditional gender roles were being challenged and redefined.
So he could be commenting on
yeah.
what he saw as like the decline of masculinity.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So then the sermon ends with Zos saying this.
Okay.
Not yet have I disentangled illusion from reality. And neither know I to whom my anathema would be the more impressionable.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like he's questioning the point of the whole thing.
Yeah, this ending is really important to understanding Spare. Because he's not trying to give you easy answers.
Or dogma.
Yes.
Like any kind of set belief system.
But he wants you to wrestle with these questions yourself.
Okay.
To grapple with,
the
nature of truth and reality.
Right.
And then come to your own conclusions.
Well, yeah. It's about the journey.
Exactly.
Not about like the destination.
That's it.
Okay. I'm starting to see that.
Good.
And this is only the beginning of the journey. Speaking of journeys.
Okay.
So like Zos delivers this sermon.
Right.
He seems to wake up from a dream.
Yeah, it's like he's been in this trance or something.
Right.
Channeling this intense and disturbing message. And then suddenly he's back in the real world.
Yeah.
Surrounded by swine.
And it's funny because like earlier he was comparing humans to pigs.
Right. Like he wakes up and he's like, oh, yeah, there's the pigs again. Yeah. And he doesn't even know if he was talking to anyone.
Right.
Or if he was just talking to himself.
It's really interesting how Spare kind of blurs the line between reality and illusion.
And that's something that keeps coming up.
It does.
In his work.
Yeah.
Like he's always messing with our perception.
It's like he's saying, how do you know what's real?
I mean,
Maybe we're all Just living in our own little worlds, projecting our own realities.
Makes you think.
It does, for sure.
So then Zos has this moment where he's like,
okay,
"This my will, O thou glorious sun. I am weary of my snakes descending, making slush."
what do you think that means?
I think maybe he's like trying to get away from the darker parts of himself.
Like the snakes.
Yeah. He wants to be more pure or something.
Maybe.
Like he's realizing how destructive his own negativity can be.
Right.
And he wants to escape that.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
And he's like, farewell to antithesis.
Interesting.
So is that. Like he's rejecting duality.
Good
Like
point.
all those opposing forces that create conflict.
Yeah.
Good versus bad. Right versus wrong.
Us versus them.
Yeah. He wants to move beyond that.
Maybe he's looking for like a more unified understanding of reality.
Where those opposites. Yeah. Just dissolve.
And that makes sense.
Yeah. Because Spare is always challenging us to think differently.
Exactly.
So then he says this.
Okay.
I have suffered. All is paid. Let me go forth to recreate my sleep.
That's an interesting one.
It seems peaceful. Like he's found some kind of resolution.
Even in that piece, there's still some ambiguity. He's going to recreate his sleep. So like this cycle of waking and sleeping, of enlightenment and illusion, maybe it's going to keep going.
Yeah. What do you think? Spare or Zos is trying to say?
I think that's the big question.
Right.
And I think Spare would be happy that we're still asking.
He didn't want to give us easy answers.
Nope. He wanted us to question everything, to challenge our beliefs, and to explore ourselves.
Our inner world.
Yeah. Even the dark parts. He's not showing us how to be saved.
Yeah.
He's challenging us to make our own path.
To be responsible for ourselves.
Yes.
And he's saying that the journey can be messy.
It can be.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy.
Full of contradictions.
Absolutely.
So, in the end, is Zos offering liberation? Or is it just nihilism?
I think that's up to each listener.
Okay.
Spare through Zos is advocating for self-reliance,
right?
Rejecting authority, and exploring your inner world.
The good and the bad.
Yeah. So does that lead to liberation or despair?
I don't know.
It depends on how you use that knowledge.
He gives us the tools.
Yeah.
But not the instructions.
He says, here's the power, but be careful.
We have to figure out how to use them.
Exactly.
And that's what makes Spare's work so interesting.
Right.
And so dangerous.
He's not trying to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
He's making you face
the
raw reality of yourself and the universe.
And find our own meaning.
Yeah. In a world that feels meaningless. So, what should our listeners do after listening to this deep dive?
I think the most important thing is to experience Spare's work yourself.
Okay.
Don't just take our word for it. Read his writings. Look at his art.
See what speaks to you?
Yeah. Let those raw expressions just wash over you and see what happens, what resonates with you, what challenges you.
What makes you uncomfortable?
Yeah. Don't be afraid of those uncomfortable ideas and those disturbing images.
That's where the real magic is.
Exactly.
And remember, there are no easy answers.
Nope. Embrace the mystery.
The ambiguity.
Spare's work is full of paradoxes.
Yeah.
Don't try to make it neat and tidy. Let it challenge you.
And make you think differently.
Yeah.
So Spare's ideas about the subconscious and the power of desire, how can we apply those to our own lives?
Yeah.
What beliefs do you need to challenge? Are you ignoring or suppressing some desires? Maybe it's time to explore those shadow parts of yourself.
And see what's there.
It's like Spare's work is a mirror. It shows us the darkest parts of ourselves.
The good and the bad.
Yeah. It's not always pretty, but we need to see it.
It's a reminder that we're complex.
We're capable of amazing things, but also terrible things.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
We have the power to choose which path we take.
You get to create your own reality.
Be the artist
of your own life.
But you have to start
right
with being self-aware.
Right.
You got to be willing to look inside and see those parts of yourself
that we try to hide.
Yeah.
So
dive deep.
Yeah.
But be careful.
Because the answers might be more disturbing than the questions.
Yeah. That's a Spare for you.
For sure.
So this deep dive into Anathema of Zos has been fascinating and thought-provoking.
Definitely.
We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
For another deep dive.
So before we wrap things up here, I think we should talk about Spare's visual art for a minute. I mean, just as weird as his writing.
Oh, yeah.
Grotesque figures, macabre symbols, it's all kind of disturbing.
Yeah, but There's this strange beauty to it.
Yeah.
It's both repulsive and alluring at the same time.
Right. And it all ties back to his writing.
Absolutely.
Like, you can't separate the two.
It's all connected.
It's all. Spare's fascination with the dark side of humanity.
The shadow self.
The primal urges. The stuff we try to hide.
That's like he's giving those things a visual form.
Yeah. And making us confront them.
He wanted us to see it all, to integrate those dark parts into our understanding of ourselves.
Spare believed that.
Yeah.
Real art should be unsettling.
Make you question everything. Make you face those uncomfortable truths.
He didn't want to make pretty pictures or tell nice stories.
Nope.
He wanted to wake people up and make them see the world differently.
I think he definitely did that.
Yeah.
His work is just as powerful today as it was back then.
I think that's why Spare's still relevant today.
Yeah.
We live in this world that's full of information overload.
So much information.
Everyone wants easy answers. They want to be told everything's going to be okay.
Right.
But Spare reminds us that it's not that simple.
There's more to it.
There are deeper mysteries, darker truths. He's saying, step outside your comfort zone.
Embrace the unknown.
Find the power and beauty that's hidden in the shadows.
In a world that feels so superficial, Spare's work is like this powerful antidote. It's a reminder that depth and mystery still exist.
And that truth can be found in the strangest places.
Exactly.
So, we're at the end of this deep dive into Anathema of Zos.
And I guess the question is, what do you think about Spare's legacy?
That's a tough one.
Is it a path to liberation or just nihilism?
I don't think there's a simple answer.
Okay.
Spare's work is just too complex to put in a box like that. But I think he gives us something.
What's that?
Freedom. Freedom to
think for yourself, to question everything, to find your own meaning.
Even when the world feels meaningless. He reminds us the journey's more important than the destination. That self-discovery never really ends. And that true freedom means embracing all of who you are, the good and the bad.
The light and the shadow.
So go explore Spare's work, see what you discover.
Delve into your own psyche and find that hidden magic.
But remember, the answers might be more disturbing than the questions.
And that's okay. That's often where the truth is.
That's it for our deep dive into Anathema of Zos. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time
for another exploration
into the mysteries of human thought and experience.